Hello everybody. In our last episode we took a look at New Zealand's first great exhibition that was held in Dunedin in 1865, and in particular at its fine arts display. Key moments in the development of fine arts in New Zealand that occurred in the wake of the 1865 exhibition included the staging of a standalone fine arts exhibition in Dunedin in 1869, which had the primary objective of discovering what artistic talent existed in New Zealand. The establishment of New Zealand's first art school in Dunedin in 1870 to nurture and grow that pool of talent, and the opening of New Zealand's first public art galleries in the 1880s. Then in 1889-90, Dunedin hosted its second World Fair, the New Zealand and South Seas exhibition, on land at the southern end of Crawford Street near the Oval. The exhibition ran over the summer months from December 1889 to April 1890, and it attracted around 620,000 visits at a time when the total population of New Zealand was a little over 660,000. As well as displays from throughout the country, exhibits also came from Australia, the Pacific, Japan and Europe. One of the highlights of this exhibition was the amusement zone, a first for an exhibition in New Zealand. Here we see its principal attractions, the Switchback Railway and the Eiffel Tower lift. A concert hall and the art gallery were also key drawcards. Together, the art gallery and the various regional courts housed some 1,500 artworks, compared to around 400 that had been shown back in 1865. The art gallery was a solid brick structure designed to reduce the risk to the highly valuable collection of works on display, some of which had even been lent by the royal family. It was divided into 6 rooms, one devoted to New Zealand oil paintings, one mostly containing New Zealand watercolours, and the rest largely stocked with British works sent from overseas. You might remember from the last episode that top honours in the fine arts category at the 1865 exhibition went to John Gully and James C. Richmond of Nelson and Charles Decimus Barrard of Wellington. All three were again represented in 1889-90, although Gully had passed away in 1888. One of Richmond's watercolours, exhibited by the Otago Art Society, received a first award, while Barrard's best this time round was a watercolour of Mount Pembroke in Milford Sound that achieved a second-class award. Of the local artists who had exhibited in 1865, few remained by 1889. Captain Thomas Robertson had passed away in Japan in 1873, although was still represented in 1889 by this painting. Of the ship Caribou leaving Otago Heads in 1867, which was exhibited by W.A. Tall. Of the other artists we looked at last time, Charles Swire and James Brown had likewise passed away in the 1870s. John Turnbull Thompson and Thomas Redmayne had died in 1884 and 1886 respectively. And Simon Every, John Irvine and George O'Brien, all in 1888. Like Robertson, O'Brien was posthumously represented by a painting which is today part of Toitu's art collection. This 1866 watercolour of George Clifford's residence at the Acclimatisation Society grounds that we saw a couple of episodes ago. The painting was lent for display at the exhibition by George Clifford himself. Peter Power was one of the few local artists who exhibited in 1865 that remained to exhibit for himself again in 1889. He had 8 works on show in 1889, twice as many as he had had in 1865. One of them, an oil painting of the Silver Stream, won him a third-class award. The two exhibitions kind of bookend Peter Power's career here. He arrived here from Australia a few years before the 1865 exhibition, and he left to return to Australia shortly after the 1889-90 exhibition. By the time of the 1889-90 exhibition, there was a whole new cohort of artists lining up to take the place of the older, rapidly disappearing generation of pioneer painters. Lawrence William Wilson, who is believed to have settled in New Zealand in the late 1870s, was one of them. By the time of the 1889-90 exhibition, L.W. Wilson was an established Dunedin-based landscape artist whose watercolours according to one critic, were perhaps second only to those of the late John Gully. In the exhibition's Fine Arts Court, he displayed 2 watercolours and 1 oil painting which were for sale, and was also represented by 2 watercolours from the collection of local gas engineer and art connoisseur David Graham. In addition, a number of his landscapes could also be found displayed in the Lakes District exhibit. The oil painting, titled Preservation Inlet from the Lighthouse Landing Place, was awarded a second Order of Merit by the jurors. J.D. Perrott, who had studied at the Glasgow School of Art and in London, and resided in Dunedin for about 10 years from the mid-1880s, offered 4 of his oil paintings at the exhibition, and was awarded a third Order of Merit for one titled Autumn Evening. As well as artists like Wilson and Perrott, who had been trained overseas and arrived here in the 1870s and 1880s, there was also some homegrown talent on display, such as that of A.H. O'Keeffe, who studied at the Dunedin School of Art and was tutored by L.W. Wilson. O'Keeffe was awarded a third Order of Merit for an oil painting titled Christmas Morning. Like O'Keeffe, Andrew Jolly Morrison, who had arrived in Dunedin when he was 12, learned his craft here and took lessons from L.W. Wilson. He'd spent about 40 years working as a draftsman until his retirement in 1926. Morrison had an oil painting of Lake Harware displayed in the Fine Arts Gallery at the 1889-90 exhibition. And he also had a specimen of illuminating entered in a different section of the exhibition. His oil painting wasn't noted by the fine arts jurors, but he did receive a first-class award for his illuminated specimen and would develop a reputation for producing this type of work. We're running out of time for this episode, but it wouldn't be complete without mentioning William Matthew Hodgkins, lawyer, self-taught artist, leading arts advocate, instigator of the 1869 Fine Arts Exhibition, and founder of the Dunedin Public Art Gallery. Hodgkins, who was a commissioner of the 1889-90 exhibition, secretary of its Fine Arts Committee, and a Fine Arts juror, entered 1 watercolour in the Fine Arts Gallery, and other lenders entered 2 additional examples of his work there. But he was also represented by an exceedingly good collection of watercolour sketches incorporated in the Union Steamship Company's display in the exhibition's Tourists' Court. Although poorly lit, the works were said to be some of the best examples of watercolour painting anywhere in the entire exhibition. Although we've really only scratched the surface of the multitude of artworks that could be found at the 1889-90 New Zealand and South Seas exhibition, we'll have to leave it there for now. See you next time, and thanks for watching.